right, welcome back to another episode of the J1S Boys Podcast. Today is Thursday, February 25th, 2021. This is your man D Jones, aka Mr. February.
And I'm Brian, everybody, aka Captain Elite, aka The Elite.
All right, this episode is going to be a special Black History Month episode discussing some famous African Americans who made some huge impacts in sports. There's so many, we're not going to be able to touch on all of them, but these are just some that really caught our eye and something that we could really talk about and drop some knowledge. But first off, I was real curious to know, in the four major sports, that being NBA, which is basketball, the NFL, which is football, MLB, which is baseball, and the NHL, which is hockey, what percentage of each of those leagues is African American? And in the NBA in 2020, it was 74.2% black. And it also has 7 of the 30 NBA head coaches are people of color, and 5 of them are black. The NFL the NFL is 58.9% black. And at the start of the 2020 season, it only began with 3 black head coaches. 3 out of 32. Wow. And then in the MLB, it's 7.7% black. And in the NHL, surprising, to me, it was very surprising, there's 26 black hockey players right now.
That you talk about hockey, actually one of the first African American to play in the hockey league. His name was Willie O'Ree. He played he had a playing career from 1958 to 1979. Actually, he's from Canada. He played for the Boston Bruins at the winger position, known as the Jackie Robinson of ice hockey. Very, very impressive career, and got inducted into the Hall of Fame in 2018. He was a left-hand shooter, so to play hockey at that time, definitely.
You said back in 19 what?
That was back in 1958 when he played. 1958 to be the first African American to play hockey,
There's a point in time where he was just the only one.
Yeah, and hockey in itself has we've never been known to have many African American athletes in the sport at all, and for him to be the first to play in the NHL and, like I said, be known as the Jackie Robinson of ice hockey, that's a big, it's a big honor there.
Next up, we got Doug Williams. He was the first African American quarterback to win a Super Bowl. He won it with the Redskins back in '88. He was a very transcending person for the position of quarterback in the NFL, especially a person of color.
Man, true Redskin fans know about Doug Williams. Doug Williams, tell you, in 1977, he led the NCAA in multiple categories, including total yards from scrimmage, 3,249, passing yards, 3,286, passing touchdowns, 38 passing touchdowns, yards per play were 8.6. Only one NFL coach worked Williams out as he was coming out of college. A little bit of irony here. Like, he was his most notable time came with the Redskins. However, when he was coming out of college, only one NFL coach worked him out, and that was the Tampa Bay Buccaneers offensive coordinator. And that offensive coordinator at the time was one Mr. Joe Gibbs. Gibbs had Doug Williams rated as the best quarterback in the draft. Tampa Bay drafted Williams with the 17th pick at the 1978 draft. He became the first African-American quarterback selected in the first round. He's a former Super Bowl MVP. And speaking of Super Bowl, obviously, like I said, true Redskins fans remember him and know that his best time came with the Redskins. And when he played in that Super Bowl game against Denver, tell you what, that he put up some gaudy numbers, 340 yards passing, 4 touchdowns, and they beat Denver 42-10. So, like, Joe Gibbs was not wrong in seeking out Doug Williams to be his quarterback. That's the impact of that alone, being the first African American selected in the first round. Like I said, this was in '78. Like I said, that time things were still coming out. It was still fresh to be able to do this, do that, and to continue to have African Americans make an impact in the sports world. It's just, things just kept growing and getting better from there for them.
Next, somebody who came across my name I'm pretty familiar with, and I know you're familiar with him, be Ozzie Newsome. He was the first African American general manager of an NFL team. As a player, he never missed a game in his 13-year NFL career. That is crazy, insane, impressive, and very durable.
Yeah, you in the NFL, you play 13 seasons and never miss a game. Man. And on top of that, to have that stat at that time, because the game has changed now. So the game people remember the game being a lot more tougher back then, which it is. And then, to never miss a game in that era, that's also impressive and testament to your toughness. And again, not only for that, like being a player and then going on to move into the front office and be the first African American to be in the office like that, like general manager, to have that kind of role. That's an impressive stat, and very well deserved as well.
He was the general manager of the Ravens when they won the Super Bowl.
Right. He had
35 and Super Bowl 47.
Definitely had an eye for talent. He was able to put together great teams, because anybody remembers the Ravens were always pretty stacked. Ozzie came out of Alabama. Like I said, he had an eye for talent.
Somebody else that came across my eye, a very familiar name, I'm sure, with a lot of people, was Arthur Ashe. He was the first black male to win an NCAA tennis championship and the first to win a Grand Slam title. I know the main thing I remember most about Arthur Ashe, I haven't really been able to sit down and watch some of his matches or whatever, but I just remember him being a trendsetter as far as wearing the glasses, and he had the afro, he had the white polo shirt. I just remember seeing that and just knowing and hearing that he was damn good at playing tennis, and he was one of the best and very trendsetting as far as an African American in that sport.
Yeah, but like tennis back then, again, not known for having many African Americans play in that sport at that time, or any sport really at that time. Again, doors were open and things continued to get better for African American athletes as time passed. One fun fact about I'm sorry, we segue from Arthur Ashe going into golf. I'm getting ahead of myself here. Golf, the first African American to play in the Masters tournament and the U.S. Ryder Cup was Lee Elder in 1975.
So 75 was the first time African Americans got out there and started teeing off on the green. That's pretty dope. Taking it to baseball, Satchel Paige, he was the first African American pitcher to pitch in a World Series. He was inducted into the Hall of Fame in 1971. That's pretty interesting to be. I mean, anytime you're the first African American to do something, I mean, your name goes in the record book automatically out the gate. But being in a World Series, best of 7, that's a lot of pressure, especially when it comes to baseball. Those fans can be very, very ruthless, and I'm sure him being an African American, they were even more ruthless towards him. So for him to be the first to pitch in the World Series, that's pretty dope.
Yeah, and come out to piggyback the pitching part. Don Newcombe was the first African American to win Cy Young Award in 1956.
Oh, 56.
And then on top, another African American. Everybody remember this name, Ernie Banks. Ernie Banks, he was the first African American player to win MVP. Won it twice in 1958 and 59.
And baseball?
Yep. Ernie Banks, Mr. Cub, Mr. Sunshine, first baseman and shortstop. Played both of those positions. All-Century team in 1999.
All-Century team? Damn.
14 times All-Star.
How long was his career? 14-time All-Star?
Yeah, not sure how long he played.
Even if it was about 20 years, 14-time All-Star.
They tried his number. His number 14 is retired.
And every team, or?
No, well, with the Cubs.
With the Cubs?
Yeah. He's a 2-time NL MVP, 2-time NL home run leader, 2-time NL RBI leader.
Jeez.
Golden Glove. He won the Golden Glove in 1960. Ernie Banks was definitely he could probably be considered like a Mount Rushmore type for baseball. Like, you can't go there. Like, so many faces for baseball. Like, you wouldn't.
He's definitely.
That's a totally different episode. You want to start going Mount Rushmores of different kind of sports, but he's
definitely Mount Rushmore.
Definitely got credentials. Like I said, definitely got credentials. Had a great career, and step off of that in the boxing world. Emanuel Stewart. In his amateur career went 94-3. National Gold Glove champion. As a trainer, he managed 25 world champions and 4 Olympic gold medalists. Names that you could link up with Emanuel Stewart: Thomas Hitman Hearns, Lennox Lewis, Vladimir Klitschko.
Oh, Vladimir.
Boxers he briefly trained. He trained boxers that he briefly trained: Oscar De La Hoya, Evander Holyfield, Vitaly Klitschko, Leon Spinks.
So he's got his name all in boxing.
Yeah, Emanuel Stewart not only had a great career as a boxer, but did well as also as training boxing too.
Keeping it on boxing, a guy that came across my eye was John Arthur Jack Johnson. He was the first African American world heavyweight boxing champion. He had a career of 104 wins and only 13 losses. Another guy they call my African Americans are definitely not known to be in NASCAR too much, but that's starting to change now in this day and age, especially with Bubba Wallace and a lot of others investing and trying to change that. But Wendell Scott, the first African American to compete full time in a NASCAR series. Taking it to basketball, the Boston Celtics were the first team to draft an African American player. That player being Charlie Chuck Cooper. On April 25th, 1950, he was the 13th overall pick in the second round. So the Celtics really, I mean, that they're already a great franchise as is. But to know that they were the first team to be like, you know what? We're going to take a chance and we're going to draft this guy and we're going to do what we want to do and screw the rest of the league as far as what their thoughts are. And to draft that guy, I mean, second round, 13th overall, that set a trend in a way that the league would just ride for years.
Sounds like the Celtics were in a world of their own, in a league of their own, because not only did they make that move, but you may know this guy, Bill Russell, was the first African American to coach an NBA team. And who that team was? The Boston Celtics, 1966. Bill Russell, man, my opinion, I mean, you can go back and forth on how do you debate who the GOAT is in the sport. Everybody obviously goes towards the Jordan, but to me, I mean, it depends. I guess it depends on what your criteria is for being a GOAT. I mean, if you want to put it on titles, this guy right here, Bill Russell, I think he's got quite a few of them. Won 11 championships in 13 years.
Yeah.
I mean, there's all kind of memes with him holding all these rings. Mm-hmm. He's a 5-time NBA MVP. Served as a player coach in 1966 to 1969.
That was the craziest thing I read about him.
I mean,
a player coach. Is there a rule now against that?
I don't know what the rule is. I don't guess it would be like
you know how good you have to be and what type of leverage you have to have with an organization to be like, you know what, we still want you on our team, but we want you coaching, but we want you playing too.
Guess he happened to be, I mean, at the time being the coach, he happened to be the best player on the team too.
I looked up his career stats: 15.1 points a game, 2.7 fouls a game, 4.3 assists a game, 22.5 rebounds per game. He averaged out at playing 42.3 minutes a game in 963 games. 13-year career from 1956 to 1969, 11 championships. I mean, Jordan, he did 6 championships. I mean, 6 championship appearances, 6 rings. That is pretty awesome, pretty dope. But Bill Russell basically won. He won almost every year he was in the league. If we're going based on rings, like B said, it's Bill Russell.
Depends on the criteria, like.
Yeah, everybody's got their.
I mean, he was a 11 out of 13, and Jordan was 6 for 6. I mean,
I'll take those 2 losses.
Yeah, well, you know, that debate, like I said, that's for another show. We can get into that on another time. But in my opinion, I mean, you got all those kind of rings. You got all those rings. How can you not be At least in the consideration for the GOAT, in the conversation for GOAT. I mean, I'm sure you are, but to me, like, you always hear that debate. First name you always hear is Jordan. First name. That's first name. It just seems like people skip over Bill Russell. I mean, I guess it's because of their style of play and the way they played the game. But
I say it also depends on who you're asking as far as the age wise.
yeah, I mean, because
some old school heads who may have been able to see Bill Russell play may immediately throw out Bill Russell, even though they still got to see Jordan play. But it just depends on who you ask. To each their own. Of course, I'd have to go on and mention Mr. Usain Bolt, the first man in history to set 3 Olympic records at the same game. Y'all know how fast Usain Bolt is. He'll slow down towards the end of a race and start beating on his chest in celebration and still win with a nice, decent lead. I mean, that guy's no joke. He's just crazy fast. 2 more facts that came across that I have to go on and mention. The first black athlete to win a Grand Slam tournament was Aletha Gibson. She won the French Open in 1956, then went on to win 4 more Grand Slams. And this is the kicker about her in general and as far as sports. After she played tennis, she moved on to golf and was the first African American on the LPGA tour in 1963.
Dual sport, tennis and golf.
Yeah.
That's impressive. I mean, you could change sports like that. It's impressive.
Clearly, she has some good hand-eye coordination. Tennis and golf.
Yeah, tennis and golf. That's
you really got to have some good hand-eye coordination for those.
Yeah.
So clearly, she has some really good hand-eye coordination and was a beast at both, clearly. And then the last fact that I came across that was very interesting to me, it's nothing sports related, but it still blew my mind when I read it. Captain William Pinkey was the first African American to sail solo around the world, around the southern tips of South America and Africa. Now, typically, black people will really mess with big bodies of water like that. But this man sailed around the world, around the tips of South America and South Africa. That's insane, because I've always heard that the waters at the tip of South Africa can be really rough. So for him to have done that and it be able to be recorded, that's hella dope.
Mm.
But there's so many other black athletes that we didn't get to mention. I mean, there's not enough time in the world to praise everybody who needs their praise, for them to get their roses while they're alive or not. But I'm gonna say this by some pivotal black athletes that made a big stance or a big impact in my life. I have to say that I can remember seeing them playing and whatnot, and can debate on to anybody about their game of play. Kobe Bryant, Allen Iverson, Michael Vick, LeBron James, Serena Williams. Who else? Barry Bonds is a big asterisk mark. Everybody knows why, because the whole steroids thing, or conspiracy or whatever. But and also Shaquille O'Neal. How could I forget the big Aristotle?
That you mentioned. Go back a couple of people that you mentioned. Allen Iverson. I got one more. There, like John Robert Thompson.
That was coach at Georgetown.
Yeah, he was a man. Became the first African American head coach to win a major collegiate championship in basketball when he led the Hoyas to the title in '84. Names that came up under him: Alonzo Mourning, Patrick Ewing, Dikembe Mutombo, and like you mentioned, Allen Iverson.
Clearly, he had an eye for the big men.
Yeah, he could. Yeah.
Who's
everybody remembers him for that classic towel that he has on his shoulder, the white towel that he has on his shoulder. Yeah, I've always loved watching John Thompson teams back then. Like he always had a tough team.
Who's some pivotal African American athletes that you can remember that you would do, put your stamp of approval on or whatever?
As far as like this, like my favorite athletes or people that just like trying kind of like change the game.
Both. What's so your favorite?
My favorite athletes. I guess you can't, as far as the African American race, you definitely can't underestimate what LeBron has done for the game, as far as like the game and the business side of things. I've been a fan watching how from the very beginning for him, like to be a teenager and to have everything on his shoulders the way he's had, and to this point, like he's carried that weight, carried it well. Like
in his whole career.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, so like a young black man with that pressure on him at that age to come this far.
And
I mean,
and he's done it well. No big, scandals or anything like that.
Yeah.
He's been surrounded by the right people. I'm looking forward to what comes of his son. His son just had knee surgery recently. Hopefully he bounces back nice from that. But he's leaving a legacy. He's got 2 sons who play ball. He's got a beautiful wife, a beautiful little girl, dope family. He's a good businessman. I mean, LeBron is.
I mean that's the new age. Like if you would probably to dig deeper and go to a different sport. I was a fan of Jim Brown and the stance and the stance that he took on things.
Yeah.
Like Jim Brown was all one of my favorites.
His highlights are crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I could go. I'd almost be another show like to do like my favorite African American athletes. It's like you said earlier, like you almost do an injustice not being able to get everybody.
Yeah.
Just getting a few names here and there and telling some stats, but there's a lot of guys that could go on that list, but to name a few, I mean, at least like I say, Jim Brown. Tony Dungy.
Yeah.
I liked him as a coach.
Was he the first black coach to win the Super Bowl?
I want to say yes, he was. Like I say, that you're doing injustice right now to sit here and try to think of anybody, but that list could be a very, very lengthy list of people. Being the sports fans that we are, surely we can come up with a list of. I mean, this right here, this tribute here. I mean, these are just a few names, but a few stats. We definitely haven't even scratched the surface of what the African American
No, not at all.
athlete has done to sports in general. But
we just want to pay homage to those and everybody who's made an impact as far as African Americans in sports. But the names that we just rattled off to you guys are some of the ones that really caught our eye. No disrespect to anybody that we've forgotten. But yeah, that was our Black History Month episode. This is D Jones, so the J1S boys, aka Mr. February, signing off.
And I'm Brian, everybody. Everybody stay safe.